The Whipping Boy, Chapter 16, wherein the prince neither bawls nor bellows. Jimmy felt a surge of the creeps. Run for it, he wondered. Instead, he began to burrow out of sight under the loose heap of potatoes. Remember, he whispered to the prince, it's me they're after, not you. Tell 'em we split up. Tell 'em I swam the river. Prince Brat merely looked at him. The voices outside boomed. Stand and deliver, I said. And I heard you, exclaimed Captain Nips. Deliver what? Potatoes? Scurvy rascals? Help yourselves. Hang your potatoes, roared Hold Your Nose Billy. Deliver us some information and you can be off. We're after 2 runaway apprentices. Apprentice highwaymen? Captain Nips scoffed. Our affair. Girl with a bear said she saw 'em streaking for the river. You carrying passengers? Jimmy pulled the iron kettle over his head. A coach door was yanked open, and Jimmy could hear Cutwater's muffled cackle. Got one. The whipping boy it is. Where's your master, eh? Jimmy held his breath. He had no reason to believe that the prince wouldn't betray him again. There came a stiff pause, and then Prince Brat said, Swam the river. By then, Hold Your Nose Billy had ripped open the opposite coach door. Even through the kettle, Jimmy imagined he could smell garlic. Swim the river, faugh! He'd need scales and fins. Hardly a moment later, the kettle was grabbed off and Jimmy's head stood exposed. Here's the potato we're after, Hold Your Nose Billy roared gleefully. Jimmy and the prince were yanked out of the coach, and the big outlaw shouted to Captain Nips, Throw me down your horsewhip and drive on. Hanging on to each boy by the scuff of the neck, the highwaymen scrambled out of sight below the embankment. Hold Your Nose Billy looked angry enough to throttle Jimmy on the spot. Tricked me, did you? He bellowed. Flummoxed me with your fancy quill scratching. The game's up, Jimmy thought. He's tumbled that the ransom note ain't worth seat. But trying to look as innocent as possible, he replied, Sir? A gold sack or 2 would have satisfied me and Cutwater, snarled the hairy outlaw. Greedy ain't our middle name, but you, raising the ain't to a great cartload, reckoned to slow us down, didn't you? It would be easier to drag around a dead horse. If we ain't light-footed, we're caught. That was your scheme. What a pair of fools, Jimmy thought. That hadn't been a scheme at all. You've got it all wrong, he declared. I swear it. Enough plunder to burden us directly to the gallows, Hold Your Nose Billy continued. Well, here's a whipping you won't never forget, he snapped. Captain Nips' whip in the air to get the feel of it. Here's the whipping boy, Cutwater put in. You said it'll go powerful worse for us if we thrash the prince himself. Hold Your Nose Billy nodded sharply. Cutwater upturned the prince, holding him by the ankles in the air. Go to it, Billy. Jimmy finally found his voice. Lay down the whip, he commanded with a princely air. Don't you have an ounce of sense between you? Hold your gab. Simpletons, you can just fill your pockets with plunder and be light-footed as ever, Jimmy declared. No flummoxes, Hold Your Nose Billy, and get away with it. The whip snapped across the prince's back. Jimmy held his breath. He knew what it felt like. He saw that Prince Brat had set his jaws, just as Jimmy had always done, and not a sound escaped his lips. Harder, Cutwater advised. You didn't raise a peep out of him. The big man let fly again. He must have a hide like an elephant, said Cutwater. "He don't feel a thing." "He'll feel this." "Hold your nose," Billy thundered, and the leather whistled through the air. The prince's jacket was being shredded. "Bawl out!" Jimmy shouted. He had dreamed of seeing the prince whipped, but now that it was happening, he found no satisfaction in it. "Holler and cry out. I won't tell anyone." But Prince Brat only girded himself for the next blow. From the top of the embankment came an outraged voice. Betsy and her dancing bear stood there. "Ruffian!" she cried out. "What are you doing to that poor boy?" "No business of yours," snarled Cutwater. "Stop it." But Hold Your Nose Billy raised the whip again. The next thing Jimmy knew, the girl had slipped the rope from around the bear's neck. "Sick 'em, Petunia. Go get 'em." Chapter 17. Petunia to the rescue. The bear came snarling down the embankment. Rising on its hind legs, it bared its teeth and bellowed out a thunderclap of a roar. Cutwater dropped the prince and was off like a greyhound. Hold Your Nose Billy, his eyes round as snowballs, went charging off into the river. He raised a great splash, and if he didn't know how to swim, he learned instantly. Jimmy had reared back, but now Betsy gave a whistle, and the bear stopped in its tracks. "Good boy, Petunia. That'll do it, darling." She slipped the rope back around the bear's neck. Then she bent over the prince. The low-down bullies, laying stripes on a boy's back. With the bear sniffing him, Prince Brat didn't move a muscle. "Rein in your beast," he whispered stiffly. "Oh, don't be afraid of Petunia. Gentle as a kitten he is. Here, let me tend to your poor hide." "No. Give us a look." "Thank you, no," the prince exclaimed. "Loomy, ain't you the brave one? Must sting something dreadful." Jimmy watched the prince slowly raise himself off the mud flat. He felt a growing amazement. Prince Brat, a brave one. It didn't seem possible, but God, that was a cast iron streak of pluck in him. The prince moved his arms and shoulders. He winced, but then began to brush himself off. "Steady on your legs," Jimmy asked. "Steady." You should have yelled and bellowed. That's what they wanted to hear. "And humble myself," muttered the prince. "You never did." Jimmy gazed at him for a thoughtful moment. Then he indicated the two highwaymen. Cutwater had vanished, and Hold Your Nose Billy was trying to keep from drowning. "Let's be on our way. They're sure to be back after us." "Not if you travel with me," said Betsy. "Me and Petunia." Jimmy found the horsewhip where Hold Your Nose Billy had dropped it. Betsy and the bear had already started up the embankment, and the boys followed. "Larks," whispered Jimmy. "Ain't we a plucked sight, the both of us, torn up and scruffy? At least no one'll take you for a prince." Not far off lay the coach on its side. "Hanged if I caught sight of that steep rise off to the side of the road," explained Captain Nips. "Tipped us over, as you see." "Either your horses need spectacles," said Betsy, "or you do." Together with Petunia, they lifted and pushed and righted the coach. They piled in and were off. Betsy and her dancing bear rode inside with the prince. Jimmy decided to sit with Captain Nips to watch for road hazards. They reached the city without further incident except for being stopped by soldiers. The king's men were clearly looking for the vanished prince, but when a bear poked its head out the door window, the soldiers stepped back and quickly waved the coach on.